Now today, we will see division of polynomials, and we're going to be using the method of long division. Now the main idea for today is that you got to remember that division is nothing more than the opposite of multiplication. So keep that in mind as we're doing the following examples. Now, how can we divide polynomials? Well, this is the method that we're going to be implementing here, which is long division. Now, this is how long division works. The setup is the following. You should always obtain some kind of a box here. So this is the setup. You're going to open a box, and inside this box, there's always going to be an inside and an outside, where the inside, you're going to be placing the numerator. So notice here that my numerator is m squared minus 7n minus 11. So that's exactly what we're going to be placing here. And outside, we're going to be placing the denominator, which in this case is n minus 8. So this is just the setup for long division. Now, how does long division work? Well, let me bring this down. How does long division work? Well, we are going to try and come up with our answer. We're going to write our answer in this space. But the answer, we're going to come up with the answer one piece at a time. So remember that here is where we're going to be placing our answer. Now, this is what we mean by coming up with the answer one piece at a time. You're going to be always pay attention to the first on the outside and the first in the inside. Now, your job is to come up with the number or an expression such that if you multiply the first on the outside, if you multiply it by the top, it should give you the first on the inside, which in this case, we have m. What can we multiply this m by? And we're going to write it here, to obtain m squared. Well, in this case, it's m, because m times m gets me the first of the inside, which is m squared. Now that we have found out one piece of our answer, what we got to do is we got to multiply everything on the outside by this, by the number or expression that we found out. So let's do that. So here we're going to have m. If we multiply by m, that's going to give me m squared, which is exactly what we wanted. Let's actually do that in red. So we're going to have m squared because m times m gets me m squared. Now we're going to multiply everything. So I need to multiply this negative 8 as well. So negative 8 times m, that's going to give me negative 8m. Now, when we're doing long division, this is pretty important, so I'm going to point it out, is that once you're done multiplying, you got to change the sign. So here, m squared, it's a positive. We're going to change that into a negative. And here, negative 8m, it's negative. So we're going to place that into a positive. We're always going to do that when we're talking about long division. So now we combine like terms. M squared minus m squared cancel out. We can combine this too. Negative 7m plus 8m. Now we're going to have an 1m. This negative 11, we have not done anything to it, so we're going to bring it down. Excellent. So now we're going to repeat the process again. Here's your first on the outside, and now this is your new first on the inside. So now we got to think, well, m, what can I multiply this m by to make it into an m? Well, notice that m times 1 gives you the first on the inside, because m times 1 gives you m. So this is part of our answer, 1, because we need it, because m times 1 gives you m. So now that we found out our number, let's actually multiply now, and let's do that in red. So now we're going to have m. Let me erase this. So now we're going to have m times 1, which is m. So let's write down here, m. And remember, you got to multiply everything as well. So this negative 8, you need to multiply by 1. So negative 8 times 1, that gives me negative 8. And again, before we combine like terms, we got to switch the sign. So if this is a positive, make it into a negative. And if this is a negative, make it into a positive. Now we can combine like terms. N minus m, that will cancel out. And now we have positive 8 minus 11, so that's minus 3. Now this, once you're done with long division, and you just obtain a solid number, This is what we're going to call the remainder. Now this remainder, you need to reflect it in your final answer. And again, your final answer is right here on top. So how do we reflect the remainder in your final answer? Well, just place that number, which is -3, and you're going to divide it by the outside, which is n minus 8. So that means that after all this, we have an answer. And that is m squared minus 7n minus 11 divided by n minus 8. This is equal to m plus 1. Let's write that again. M plus 1 minus 3 over n minus 8. Again, here we were coming up with the answer one term at a time. And now that we hit a remainder, then we know that this is the last piece in our final answer. And here we just wrote our final answer. Let's try another example. Now again, you want to use long division. So the first thing that you should do is just do the setup. So again, the setup is just some kind of a box here. So open the box. Now that we have this, again, inside the box is the numerator, which in this case is n squared minus n minus 29. And on the outside, you're going to have your denominator, which is n minus 6. Now that you have your setup, you're just going to look at the first on the outside and the first on the inside and think, well, n, what do I need to multiply it by to obtain n squared? Well, in this case, it's n, because n times n gives you the first on the inside, which is n squared. So now that you found the first piece of your answer, let me write this. We're going to multiply everything now. So now we're going to have n times n gives you n squared. -6 times n gives me -6n. And remember, every time, once you're done multiplying, you got to change the sign. So if this is a plus, change into a minus, and this is a minus, change into a plus. And now that we're done with this, we can combine like terms. Notice that the n squares are going to cancel out. And now we're going to have this. Positive 6n minus n, that's positive 5n. We have not done anything to this 29, so we're going to bring it down. Excellent. So now again, this is going to become your first of the inside. And the first on the outside is still n. So now we think, well, n, what do I need to multiply by to obtain the first of the inside now, which is 5n? So notice that n times 5 is going to give me the first of the inside, which is 5n. And that's exactly what we want now. Now that we have found the second term in our answer, we got to perform the multiplication now. And let's do the multiplication in red. So now we're going to have n times 5. So that becomes 5n. -6 times 5, that's -30. And remember, once you're done with multiplication, you always need to change the sign. So if this is positive 5n, becomes negative, and this is negative, becomes positive. Now that we have found, or we have changed the sign, now we can combine like terms. So let's see, this 5n's, they cancel out, and now you have 30 minus 29, so that's equals to 1. So now this is your remainder. So we just got to reflect the remainder in our final answer, and that is plus 1 divided by what we had outside, which is n minus 6. So let's just write down our final answer here. So that says our answer is n plus 5 plus 1 over n minus 6. So now let's do our last example for today, which, nope, that's your entrance ticket. I guess that's it. Now, we just did 2 examples today. Hopefully this is enough for you to try to do your entrance ticket, which is here. just try to divide the following expression. Now, one thing that I'm going to say here is that just the setup itself, this expression, if we want to use the setup that we were using in our video, this is equal to a squared minus 28 divided by a minus 5. Now, maybe if I would wrote it this way, it becomes a little bit easier as to what the setup is going to look like. So notice that this expression is the same as this, and this is the kind of expressions that we were using in our video. So now that you know this, just perform long division in this small expression.